I apologize in advance if this video seems particularly hateful. I have nothing but respect for everyone who's helped bring this book series to life, and my passionate wording and tone stem from a place of love and joy. This is by far my favorite book series of all time, and I could talk endlessly about all the ways I find it amazing. But this just happens to be the one thing I don't like about it. However, if you do like this book, more power to you. I have no qualms against anyone who likes something that I don't. With that said,
this is the most obnoxious thing I've ever experienced in my life.
Wings of Fire Book 15, Flames of Hope, might just be my single least favorite thing of all time. I'm not sorry. I guarantee I benefited less from something like Finding Jesus or Zoo Wars, but when I've come to expect such amazing things from a series and am met with a pile of garbage, it makes me hate that pile of garbage even more than those. It's especially insulting when said pile of garbage stands as the finale of the series. What the hell? Okay, admittedly, I might be exaggerating just how terrible it is a little bit, but in my defense, I feel incredibly passionate about this series, and it pains me to see things get this low. I know that Wings of Fire can be amazing. It shouldn't have to suffer from such a momentum-destroying, character-assassinating, incredibly boring finale. Trust me, I've seen bad finales, but this is the next level. This is the kind of thing you have to actively try to screw up. Alright, let's just get into the video. I'll start with a recap in case you don't know or don't remember the setup for this book. Basically, there's 2 continents with dragons. One continent has been overrun by a mind-controlling plant, and they need to send 1 dragon from each of the 11 tribes to stop the plant. There's prophecy, some magic stuff, blah blah, you get the point. Alright, now real quick, again, I'll go over a few things I actually somewhat like about this book. To start, the first chapter is actually pretty good and enjoyable. It's what I've come to expect from these books, just some good old-fashioned banter between characters. I love it that all these great characters are joining hands to save the world, and it's really fun to see them all together. For 1 chapter. After that, half the characters just leave the story, never to be seen again. Awesome! So why did they even come in the first place? I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll talk further about the destruction and abandonment of characters later. I'm supposed to be talking about the good stuff. I guess Bullfrog was kind of fun. Not as fun as some other characters would have been, but he's better than I expected, which was a nice surprise. And honestly, there's not a lot of other Mudwings that they could have chosen that I would have liked, because I don't really care for any of them. And okay, that's it. That's all I like. Time to get into the bad stuff. My first problem lies right in the dedicated prophecy for books 11 through 15. It clearly states, face a great evil with talons united, or none of the tribes will survive. Pretty cool, right? Well, guess what? They don't do that at all! Luna is the only one to face the great evil, literally no one else. She's hardly even the one who defeats it. Lizard just tells her to cut a vine, then she does. Boom, world saved. No united talons necessary. Who needs the other tribes? I'll just jump down a hole and listen to exposition for 2/3 of the book. And that's a nice segue into the terrible utilization of characters in this book. I said earlier that it gathers a bunch of really interesting characters and Coconut. Editor's note, I realized while editing this that his name is actually Pineapple, not Coconut. But I'm just gonna leave it in because it honestly just further proves how unimpactful and unmemorable this character is. More on that later. And puts them all on a team together. Then it just splits them all up. Great. Really glad Keebly and Moon and Lynx and Bullfrog and Cricket just don't appear in the story anymore. But wait, didn't some of those characters go with Luna? Doesn't that mean we get to see some of them? What do you think this book is? Of course we don't see them, because Luna jumps down a hole and we never see any of those characters again. So now you're thinking, so it focuses too much on Luna? That's the problem? Nope! Luna also gets sidelined. That's right, the main character of the book, the one who we see through the perspective of, is sidelined. How? Luna doesn't do anything. She's not even interesting. The protagonist should feel like the main character for this period of time. It needs to be the person who has something happening to them that can only happen to them that is also important to the overarching story. An example being Peril going to the Sky Kingdom with Scarlet. That's something that could only happen to her and is important to the story because it ties up the Scarlet plotline, introduces Chameleon and the Scroll, and solidifies Ruby as the new queen. The person who jumped down that hole could have been anyone, and sure, maybe you could make an argument that it had to be Luna because Dusky had to be there to convince Lizard to help. But A, Dusky convincing Lizard is just a stupid way to keep the plot moving forward, and B, that's not the only problem I have with Luna being the protagonist. The Breath of Evil does not connect with Luna any deeper than the fact that she wants to save her friends. All the people they brought to Pantala want to save Pantala. What makes Luna the one who has to confront the main evil? She has no inner struggle that Cottonmouth or the stupid plant personify or contrast. She's just trying to save the continent like anyone else. Further proving that it could have been anyone. Back to the other characters. I feel like the roster of chosen characters could have been a bit better. Even though that wouldn't fix much because, as I said, none of them are in the story longer than 3 chapters. As alluded to before, who cares about Coconut? There were innumerable Rainwings you could have chosen in place of this cardboard cutout. Kinkajou would probably not be the best choice, but Jambu, Mangrove, or literally any Rainwing who's the least bit competent would have been better. After Animus Magic was written out for the sole purpose of the Breath of Evil posing any threat at all, I suppose it made sense for Tsunami to be chosen over Turtle or Anemone since, while I enjoyed those characters more and they would have been more fun to have, they don't make as much sense since their main value in a world-saving team doesn't function anymore. I have a similar take on Sky's inclusion since Peril was the obvious in-universe and out-of-universe choice, not biased. But Sky's ability to commune with humans makes him pretty much a necessity, even though I would have liked Peril much more. So what? The characters, usually the main highlight of these books, is done poorly here. Maybe the plot makes up for it? I feel like a broken record, because no. What plot? You thought this book would have any forward momentum of any kind? No. We're just sitting in a hole, listening to exposition dump after exposition dump, while the book desperately tries to explain the Scorching, the origin of the Breath of Evil, Cottonmouth and Lizard's backstory, the history of humans, and it just takes up the entire book so that nothing happens until the very end, where one single action saves the entire world. There's barely any build-up for how impactful and high stakes this mission is supposed to be because we're just sitting in a cave listening to truckloads of elucidation the whole time. Okay. I'll give credit where credit is due, as little as it is. The backstories that take up most of the book do have a mildly stimulating plot, but it just feels unwarranted since it's not about the present or any of the interesting characters. The key word being interesting. More on that in a second. If a story is going to take place in the present, it shouldn't feel like a glorified prequel. You could have just done what was done for Legends Darkstalker, although that was handled much better because we actually got insight into Darkstalker as a character in the main series. The Legends book was just there to clear up his somewhat muddled backstory, as he's not the most trustworthy guy. You shouldn't turn a mainline book into a Legends, especially not the finale, where I'm actually expecting stuff to happen. And the cherry on top, the thing that ultimately makes this my least favorite piece of media of all time, is the villains. Just like before with the characters, a major highlight of this series is the villains. Scarlet, Chameleon, Albatross all serve as great, enjoyable villains. There's also Darkstalker, who I genuinely view as the greatest villain of all time. Seriously, how does one series have one of the most fantastically written characters I've ever seen, and also this? Anyways, I'll start with the less egregious of the two villains. Wasp was already poorly implemented in the other books, but it is just hilarious how much worse it got in this one. For someone who's been set up as the main villain for most of this arc, it's astounding that she's not even treated as a threat. And I honestly don't remember any impactful or important appearances of her in this book. And the more I think about it, the only time I can think of in the entire series where Wasp has an impactful and or important appearance is when she reveals she's controlling the librarian. Yep, a scene she doesn't even appear in is her most threatening appearance. So, while she's not abysmal, she's very poorly handled, although I would consider it a more general issue with books 11 through 15. Now, the real issues I have stem from Cottonmouth, but I'd say it's more of the Breath of Evil in general, as Cottonmouth himself is practically non-existent in this story. I've already gone over a couple of problems I have with him, so I'll just skim back over some of them. Like I said like 2 seconds ago, because the whole book is taken up with exposition, Cottonmouth doesn't really do much. He has no character, no interesting motive, no sympathetic elements whatsoever, 3 things I identify Wings of Fire villains with greatly. Cottonmouth also has zero real attachment, connection, or similarities with Luna, which leads to the 2 characters to feel incredibly separated and unimportant to each other's stories, unlike other villain-slash-hero duos like Scarlet and Peril, Darkstalker and Moon, Keebly and Vulture, etc. Okay, that last one wasn't a great example, but you get the idea. Lizard is only there to give lore drops and keep the loose, shallow plot moving, and by that I literally mean he just tells Luna what to do to save the world, then boom, world saved. I've literally already said this. Lizard, at the very least, has a character, which is more than I can say about the 2 other empty husks in this book. At the end of the day, I wouldn't go as far to say that Book 15 ruined Wings of Fire, because honestly, I don't really care for the 3rd arc. My heart lies with books 6 through 10, because those exemplify what really shines about the series. I have zero knowledge on the general consensus about this book, so if this is an unpopular opinion, I'm very curious as to how and why people would like what I view to be a complete train wreck. And again, I'm sorry if this video felt a little more like a rant than a review, but fulminating over this book is pretty much a hobby for me at this point. And my unbridled fury does genuinely come from my love for the series. I do believe I expressed my problems with it and why it doesn't work in a way that's comprehensible, and I hope you at least enjoyed listening to me yap about this stupid book. Thank you for watching, and subscribe.